Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us once again for our third and final installment of this national conversation on the future of work. My name is Rebecca J. Viagran. I am the Director of Workforce Development and Community Partnerships at Texas A&M University San Antonio and a former City Council member in San Antonio, Texas, District 3. I will be your moderator for today's panel discussion. And on behalf of KLRN, we would like to thank our sponsor, Texas Mutual, for making this discussion series possible. As a reminder, KLRN was one of 5 PBS stations across the U.S. chosen to participate in this national discussion on the future of work. The PBS 3-part documentary film premiered on September 1st, and you can catch it on KLRN still. As we come to the conclusion of our series, we started our discussion on entering the workforce. Then we moved to the state of work, and now to exiting the workforce. In today's climate, many people may be saying, there is so much need right now. Who could possibly be thinking about exiting the workforce? Well, plenty of people, and businesses and industries are trying to manage what that looks like and how to adapt as people are exiting, retiring, or starting something new. We are on Facebook Live, and our title says Community Discussion, so we invite you, if you have any questions for our panelists, to please enter your respectful and relevant questions into the comment sections, and we will work to build them into our Q&A portion. Now, let me introduce our panelists. First, we have DeAnne Cuellar. DeAnne currently serves as the Texas State Director of Older Adults Technology Services, or OATS. OATS engages, trains, and supports older adults in using technology to improve their quality of life and enhance their social and civic engagement. DeAnne is also a tech equity advocate and communication strategist, advocating for media justice and digital inclusion for historically underrepresented communities. Next, we have Melanie Romero. Worked 20 years in the TV and film industry as a production manager, but decided to step away to be more at home with her children and family, and also continued her education online. After having her 3rd child, she re-entered the workforce as a photographer, which led her to her current job as a production manager for Mission Pro Wrestling, an all-women wrestling promotion company. And next we have Ms. Juliana Stith, U.S. Navy retired. Juliana served 20 years in the U.S. Navy as an aviation logistics specialist, and Juliana currently works for the United Way of San Antonio and Bexar County as a military navigator. Her work involves assisting military and veterans to connect with resources such as VA benefits, employment, basic needs, and more. Post-military retirement, she earned her master's degree in counseling and guidance from one of the greatest universities, Texas A&M University San Antonio, a military embracing university, and obtained licensure as a licensed professional counselor. Ladies, thank you all for agreeing to be a part of this conversation. And let me go ahead and jump into some of the questions so we can continue to move this discussion along. As mentioned earlier in my comments, our ways of work are changing or have changed because of the pandemic. If you all, I'd like to hear all of your perspectives in your capacity and as you've seen it. What